Welcome to another Rooster Talk. This is the Margaret River series, again, just in celebration of 2 years of Samso. Today I've got James Marsh here from Andromeda Metals. There's a few things that's happened since the last time we spoke, James. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Samso. It's good to catch up again. And as you said, there's a few things happened since last time. I'm back in the Adelaide Nerve Centre now, so there's been a lot happening. Probably first thing to address is that we did put an announcement out this morning about a marketing services agreement. So it's something that we've been looking at for quite some time now, is moving to the next stage in marketing. So how do we convert our existing letters of intent for offtakes across to binding binding contracts and supply agreements? And also, how do we diversify the risk and move out to other areas, other regions apart from China, and also potentially other applications? So this morning we announced that we've signed up Conrad Partners to undertake marketing services for us in mainland China, and we had a number of options to look at here, and so we try to do things at Andromeda as professionally and as thoroughly as possible. So we've been talking to 3 different groups, and in quite some detail decided that Conrad's were the right ones to use for this at the moment. They have a number of staff based in mainland China. They also have people in Adelaide, which is also very interesting for us and also very useful. And the plan is that they will work very closely with myself, and we have 2 other Andromeda staff, 2 other Chinese Andromeda people who work for us. One's actually in China and one's in Australia. So now we're going to work very hard on converting those offtakes to binding agreements, and also looking at locking in contracts for toll treatment of our materials in China and possibly in Japan. So the other bit of news that hangs off that really is the fact that we have now completed production of approximately 10 tons of commercially produced products out of Japan. So a Japanese plant has just over 4 tons of what we call Halloysite 70 product, which is about 70% less than 2 microns, and also about the same amount of Halloysite 90, which is about 90% less than 2 microns, so a much finer product. And incidentally, they have also produced something called Halloysite 50, which is interesting new development, which is about 50% less than 2 microns, and much easier to produce, potentially some very interesting margins to be had there on that material. So we have that large amount of commercial product, which will be used by Conrad and also our own personnel, be sent to customers for their final factory scale approval trials. This varies from about 50 kilos to probably even sometimes up to maybe half a ton in some cases, depending how big the customer is. But this process has taken a while because we had to get this material produced, then we had to get this material fully characterized. So we had the chance to find out exactly what we had produced, also what it would do, and also produce very nice data sheets to go alongside that material. We are also running our own ceramic tests on those products. So we're making test pieces up, and we're also doing a very large run of porcelain items as well. So by the end of September, we should have a reasonable amount of porcelain items, which are loaded up with Andromeda, which also be very interesting. So that's been the main development, which is only broken news today.
Yeah, I guess, with what you've just mentioned in terms of what Conrad's is doing, are you saying then that you've had offtakes agreements and you're converting that to the next stage, or are they still sort of doing that marketing for you?
Yeah, so what we're using them for is they're very used to locking in binding robust legal contracts with Chinese end customers for Australian minerals. So they've got a lot of experience on that side of things. Now we have in the company, we have a very large amount of experience in selling these products. So within probably 3 of us who are really focused on sales into China at the moment. We have probably about 60, 70 years of experience. So we have these offtake letters of intent signed up with a number of customers for over 200,000 tons a year of final product, which represents almost all of our production, our planned production from our, according to our pre-feasibility study for our plant. So really the bulk of our production is already signed up in non-binding agreements. So Conrads are being used to now help us set up the right sort of contracts and get those customers over the line and sign them up to binding offtake agreements. But we also are being very careful that we don't want to just put all of our eggs in one basket and get everything locked up in China, especially with the current economic climate at the moment. So we're also looking at using this material that's been made in Japan. We're sending out samples around the whole world. So that's going into a number of different countries, some end users, some distributors and agents, and they'll be doing the same thing. So we'll be getting those pushed through to offtake agreements in other parts of the world. Okay.
That's the marketing side of things, I guess. In what's been happening on the ground, on the resource side of things. I know I've seen some results, some announcements in your past announcements mentioning that you've got a new resource and you've got a new prospect. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's correct. So we, since we've spoke last, we converted our main resource into a reserve. So that's for the what we now call the Great White Kaolin project. So that's the other thing that's happened. We changed the names. The reason for that was that from a global perspective, people didn't really understand what Putra was. They couldn't even pronounce it properly, let alone understand what it was or where it was properly. So we decided that we were to have some name changes and convert it to something that had a bit more bit more connection with the South Australian district region, and also something that represented material. So Great White is now our Great White Kaolin project is the whole area, and our Great White resource is used to be what was Carey's Well resource. So that's now become a reserve. Since then, we have been doing lots of drilling. We've drilled in total 4 different resource areas. So we recently converted Mount Hope, which is a 100% project. That has now become, we have now resource there, and we have about 7 to 8 million tons of final product in the ground there as an inferred resource. Now that's quite interesting, because what we found there was we found a certain amount of that, approximately half of the area of interest was Halloysite Kaolin, which is the same as our Great White resource. But the other half was some ultra high purity non-Halloysite Kaolin, so just conventional Kaolin without the tubes. So no nanotubes, just the plates. But it has got exceptional purity. So some of the lowest iron contents, for example, I've ever seen anywhere in the world. Now, this puts it into a different category, because that sort of kaolin is quite rare, not used in ceramics, but more used in things like coatings, so very high quality paints, and also inks, where they want something that's very fine, but exceptional purity. And that material does sell for very high prices in the market, and even quite often even higher end market price than we have for the ceramics, which is $700 a ton, which is already very high. So we've got something very interesting there. And since then, we've also, once we found that, we went back to Great White resource, had a closer look at what we had there. We've also found a significant area in there that we previously weren't including, but now on close inspection, that has also got ultra high purity. So no halloysite in that little area, but ultra high purity. So both those materials are now going to be tested. Going to go through full application testing in the UK. And then we will look at incorporating that area of business probably into our DFS, our definitive feasibility study.
Okay. Since we spoke, I mean, I've had a lot of feedback from viewers and things like. One of the questions they put to me was, from a logistic point of view, in terms of, obviously your material is not your traditional, iron ore things, because the finer, the high quality, the lighter, the more becomes dust and hence the question is like, how do you guys see that as a, well, obviously you can transport it. I guess it's like, how much is that going to affect the margin when that time comes?
Yeah, good question. Because bulk density is an issue when you're talking about fine powders. Then bulk density is always a question. How much you transport in a fixed volume. So at the moment, what we're doing is we are planning our pre-feasibility study. The initial plan is to ship DSO overseas and toll refine and sell that, and then after 18 months move to processing on site. So when it goes in bulk, that's no problem. It's quite high density still material, and that's easy to cope with. Once we remove the sand, then it becomes much lower density, and the packing density is much lower. So then it has to go into big bags. So the plan is to put that into bulker bags, which is approximately 1 ton. So about 1 meter cubed bags, which are square bags. They can stack them 4 high. They will go into a hold of a ship. So when you transport those, you use something called a spreader bar, which can take sometimes up to 16 bags in one hit on a crane. And that just drops into a ship's hold, and they take about 5,000 tons that way into a ship's hold. So that will be our plan. That when we do that processing, though, this is what we're looking at quite closely in the DFS. We're not 100% certain yet whether we will just desand it and ship it like that, or whether we will, when we do the wet refining, whether we will convert it to a final product, which will be probably in noodle form. And this means when you dry it to a pressed cake, it then goes through a noodling machine, which makes it into little noodles, sometimes just about 2 or 3 centimeters long, noodle shape, which are dried. And then those can be used by ceramic customers directly into their process. So it makes it very easy to pack. You get a lot of material into a small space, and it's not dusty at all. So the option would be to do that noodling process, and we're looking at that one. We are also looking at the possibilities to sell material directly from site into new Australian application that we're investigating. Can't say too much about that at the moment. It's very exciting, but we have a potential new and extremely high value application. But there'll be some more news about that probably in September, October. And if that was the case, then we would simply desand it at site and then just transport it anywhere in Australia for sale.
Okay. In that sense, like when you're talking about the high density, I assume you're talking about dust particles, which then would be an issue for shipping, right? It flows.
Yeah. So if it was if kaolin is produced as a milled powder, then density is about 0.6, which means you get basically 600 kilograms into a 1 cubic meter, which is not a lot. No, it's quite light. That's only if you mill it down to a final powder. Now, if we're selling to the ceramics market, they don't need a fine powder. They can cope with the noodles, which I mentioned before, lump material. So you can just sell on big lumps, and the moisture can be quite high. So you can keep the moisture around about 10%.
Yep.
Sell it as a 10% lump, 10% noodle, or even press cake. Because when it goes into the process to make porcelain, it goes into a big ball mill with other materials, other ingredients, and it's all milled up in a slurry, so it gets re-slurried again. So in that case, dust issues are greatly reduced. Density is not a problem. So, but we would want to probably ship that in big bags still, because we wouldn't want any contamination. If it's going straight to a customer from site, we don't want contamination. If it's going to be have some secondary processing to make, for example, the 90% less than 2 micron material, then it could be shipped as bulk. In that case, you could ship noodles as bulk or press cake as bulk, because any impurities will be removed in a second stage.
Okay. With the market being so buoyant, I mean, it's no big secret. Almost every commodity or every company is going for a run. I hear in the grapevine a couple of, one that's very close to an IPO who's going into your industry. Are you seeing some of these, or do you know of these kind of guys that are coming in? Are they going to be crowding your space?
I do keep quite a close eye on what's going on in the industry. I've got connections in every area, so I I hear things and see things and find out things all the time. So I know what's going on, and I've been involved in a whole lot of projects around Australia, let alone the rest of the world. So, and I know the Western Australian kaolin very well. I worked in a project there for 5 years. But what they have over there is the non-halloysite type. So what they're going for is a different market to us. If they wanted to go for for example, for the high-end ceramics market like we are, they would have to get some halloysite and add it to their kaolin, which is what is done in practice. So the company, the biggest kaolin producer in the world, Imerys, they have a decent high-quality kaolin, which is fairly similar to the Western Australian kaolins, and they ship over halloysite from a small mine in Turkey, which is an underground mine. It's hand-picked by people into baskets, so it's very rudimentary mining. But they ship that over and add in about 10% of that halloysite into their kaolin, and then they sell that blend into the porcelain market, which is what we're aimed at. Now we got a massive head start there because we got that blend naturally occurring in the ground, and there's no other way to replicate that unless you've got a halloysite mine somewhere, and those things really don't exist anywhere in the country, not one in the country and nowhere in the world even. So it's for us, I mean, they're looking at a different sector to us. It's a much lower value sector. If you're talking about the paper is where 40% of kaolin is used in the world, but the average selling price there maybe $250, $300 a ton. So it's really, really quite low. And that's why there's been kaolin projects over in WA for 30, 40 years. And it's been probably the biggest resources in the world are over there for high purity kaolin, but they've never been commercialized. And there's a very good reason for that. It's just too expensive to produce for the market that they are suitable for. So we would never try and compete in that market because you're up against the American kaolins. They'll be up against American kaolin producers who have a lot of advantages in their costs, much cheaper to produce for them. So while it's interesting, it does raise the profile of kaolins, and it seems to be a hot topic at the moment. I'm very happy that Andromeda's got the only halloysite kaolin, which has got a completely separate market to what they're chasing. So we're quite comfortable, and if it improves the profile of kaolin and people get to understand what it's for, then that's all well and good. And then we can look after our end of the market. And the halloysite, we also have the potential to produce some stage high purity halloysite as well. And we have a potential resource at Camel Lake, which is from the small samples that have been taken over the years, they've shown to be probably the best halloysite ever known to man. So a very interesting material there. Nothing like it in the world. And we are progressing that now. We've actually had the first meeting there. So that's a big step forward with the Camel Lake opportunity. And I'm really hoping that we can get on the ground there, maybe by end of the year, and get some samples of that stuff. Because the whole world wants that. I get asked probably every week from people around the world for that particular halloysite. So we got the opportunity there in the Great White Project, where we got the blend. We've also got another resource there, which I haven't mentioned. It was previously called Kondarinji, but we've now renamed it the Hammerhead resource. It's not officially a resource yet, but that will happen very soon. And that one is looking like it's high purity and also much bigger than our existing resource. So that news should be out soon as well. So we got the ability to produce a massive amount of the halloysite kaolin hybrid material in different ratios of halloysite to kaolinite. We've also now got the potential to produce ultra high purity non-halloysite kaolin, which in this material is far purer than anything that's found over in WA, out of Mount Hope and also at the Great White. So we're sort of collecting together a very nice portfolio of products there. As I mentioned before, we're finding some new applications for the halloysite kaolin that people haven't known about before. So that's also something we're working on pretty hard.
Well, mate, I'm glad you guys have changed the names, because I'm one of those guys that can't pronounce it and can't even spell it. So, look, going forward, I guess for the lay person, can you outline to us, like your timeline in quick succession? As I always say, timelines is always plan A and followed by B's and C's, but What's the Plan A timeline you guys are looking at this moment?
Yeah, very important point to cover there. And at the moment we have our planned start of operations, also where we actually be constructing the mine site, and mine is February 2022. So that is our timeline. Now, what we've done there, we've gone through and worked backwards from all the approvals that we need to get through and the permitting we need to get through. It may sound like a lot of time to some people, but that's just the nature of the process. The market is there and the product's there, but there's a very detailed process to get through. And luckily, we recently took on a new operations director called Joe Ranford, and he's been through this in South Australia a couple of times already with other mine projects. So he's been a tremendous help to us. And so he's got this timeline planned out to the nth detail. If you printed out our project schedule, it would fill a small room with all the timelines, all interlinked. So it's all there in massive detail. And he's been a tremendous help. He's really maximized all of our resources in that area. We have taken on new staff as well to help with that, to assist with that, to make sure that we don't miss anything. And we're talking to the government on a weekly basis, more or less on a weekly basis, to make sure we meet that timeline. So it's just a case of getting the permitting approvals in place, and all that is going through, along with the negotiations with the traditional owners, we did that last week and went very well. Negotiations with landholders, that's also progressing very well. Did that last week down in the Puchera region. So looking forward as we go step by step, then the DFS is probably the next major milestone, which we're looking at December for that to be completed. Now, the main reason for that taking so long is that we have to get this processing really clearly identified, the right equipment and the right product and the right product form, because we have potentially 3 different products there, and 2 of those, possibly even 3, we could make at the site. We're not sure. Certainly 2 we can make at site. And if we can do that, the question is, do we do that straight away, or do we wait 18 months and do it with cash flow? Because the CAPEX for this is not particularly large. So we could just take up maybe some debt equity, some sort of deal, and start that processing right from the word go. If we can make a very good margin on a coarser product, if there's a new application that we're looking at comes through and looks very attractive, then it may make sense just to go straight into production and make that right away. And then numbers, that would dramatically change. That could dramatically change the numbers from our PFS, all in the right direction, make it much more positive. So that's happening. Going back from that, we have got a number of options out still on the market, which we've got about $6 million left of options to be exercised, and there's only 3 months left before they expire. So by November, the end of November, then they have to be exercised. So just a reminder to anyone holding options, then time is running out. We've got about $3 million in the bank as well, so we're in a very strong position. And also in the background there, because I have more time freed up, thanks to Joe taking on a lot of the permitting approvals process, also looking at a number of new opportunities. These are quite exciting opportunities. Can't say too much about them yet, but they're all associated with Kaolin, and they would all be a significant positive outcome for Andromeda if even one comes through. So maybe 3 or 4 of those. If one comes through, then there'll be another big step change in what we are and what we do. So quite exciting things to do there, and quite exciting things that we're working through. But the permitting approval through to operation, we're doing everything as professionally as possible. We always try and do things as professionally as we can. So we use the best possible advice and staff at each stage. We don't want to overpromise. So at the moment, we're confident we can make that timeline, and we're making every effort to make sure we do.
Oh, that's good. In closing, I was going to say to you, what give you that why be a shareholder? Why be hold the shares? And you more or less summed that up in that last statement there.
Yeah, well, true. I mean, our aim, our ambition is to be the world's biggest supplier of Halloysite Kaolin, biggest in the world, and also to be the biggest player in the Halloysite nanotechnology, which is a downstream area, and all this new IP that's potentially coming through, new research that we're doing, and we've got a number of research projects now covering things from medical applications, batteries, carbon capture, hydrogen storage. All of those projects are moving forward, and they're all giving some very interesting results. And I hope to be able to make some sort of announcement on that in the near future as well.
Oh, fantastic. James, mate, thank you for participating in the Rooster Talk. Sounds like you guys are all set for, the next 2 years.
We certainly are, yeah. Exciting times ahead for us, any Andromeda shareholders. And yeah, I think we can look forward to a very bright future. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, James.
Thanks, and bye.
Okay, bye.